Good afternoon. Welcome to the SBAM daily briefing. It is Tuesday, April 7th. This is the 20th version of the daily briefing. If it's your first time, welcome. If you've been with us all along, welcome back. This is our effort to try to keep our members informed and help them navigate this crisis. I said it the other day, we really set out to be a resource for our members, but I think it's been interesting that it's really kind of become a community. And I know we have several people who come on here virtually every day and chat back and forth with some of the other people on it. And among other things, the community is really what we try to do at the Small Business Association of Michigan. We know that being a business owner can be a lonely place, and particularly at a time of crisis. So I've watched as through a private Facebook page for our leadership council, or just groups of people who know each other getting together on a regular basis as business owners. So we're happy to be a community. We've had somewhere between 250 and 300 people live each day on this daily briefing, and by the end of the day, there usually are somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 who have sort of tuned in to the daily briefing. So we're happy to be here and continue to be that resource for you and a community for you. I also want to take a minute to recognize a new strategic partnership. It is with the Lake Superior Community Partnership up in UP. They are our newest strategic partner, and I think several of their members are joining today. So welcome and welcome to that new strategic partner. Brian, it's almost become your trademark that you're in your car, and where are you today, and what's up?
Well, I'm in in the gas station, or at the gas station by the freeway again. I could have stayed home today because Julie and the kids are out for a walk right now, but I thought it would confuse everybody too much, so I'm back in the car. But I did want to say to the people that are tuning in each day to this, that when you go through your application, I'd love to, anybody at the Small Business Association of Michigan would love to hear about it getting approved. We're trying to keep track of which banks and credit unions have gotten to the point where they're processing and approving. So we've got a list that's coming through now. So and thankfully it's growing. So we're hearing more and more that are coming online. But that can help us when other people are having problems or maybe hit a dead end. That can help us keep track of what some other possible leads are to get this done.
All right, Brian, we've spent a lot of time talking about sort of narrowing this whole thing down to something pretty immediate, which is the Paycheck Protection Program. And the application you were just referring to is application for the PPP. And we've gone to this sort of extraordinary effort to try to make sure small businesses in Michigan know about it, whether they're members of ours or not. That they should, if they've never heard of it, they really need to pay attention to this. As we've said, we think that Michigan will heal better and sooner the more Michigan companies that take advantage of it. So we've really been trying to raise awareness of that, and we brought on a partner. Would you introduce our partner and sort of where we're going with that whole?
So if you checked out the mipaycheckprotection.com website, which is meant to broadcast to the world the availability of a loan that is forgiven to pay payroll and utilities and rent and mortgage interest, you can see how it was a lot of work to put together the content of that website. And SBAM worked in close partnership with the experts at the Michigan Association of CPAs. And I can't say enough about this organization and the work that they do. And you just don't get better financial know-how than this fine group of people. And so we had invited to come on today a couple of folks associated with that organization, including the brand new president and CEO, Bob Doyle, of the Michigan Association of CPAs. So Bob, I'd like to just introduce you to our audience with a thank you for the invaluable work that you guys did to help create the content that is creating a fair amount of, not just a fair amount, an extensive amount of traffic and increased knowledge about the Paycheck Protection Program and its importance.
Sure, Brian. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on this today. And I can't. It really was a dream team when you first brought us in, and within 48 hours, working with you and the team from Rocket Mortgage and MEDC and DTE Energy, it was frankly, it was amazing that we were able to pull that website together. And behind me certainly was a team of volunteers that we put together a quick task force to try to make sense of the program, try to get that information in small business owners' hands so they could kind of take it in and be able to apply for the loan or the grant as quickly as possible. Just a little bit about MICPA. We are the state association for CPAs. We have over 19,000 members based in Troy, Michigan, been around for a long time. And it really is certainly a privilege for me to be the new president CEO. It's officially my second week here. So it's been quite the opportunity for me to learn much about what we do here as CPAs in the state and what we're doing to continue to serve our members and businesses throughout the state. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm definitely not a CPA and not an expert in this field. And one of the things that when we launched the website, we wanted to answer as many questions as we could from small businesses. So we have an email address that is in place, and we've received over 100 emails from small businesses, and we've been trying to get to them and answer those as quickly as possible. And one of our volunteers, who is Jamie LaPiccolo, who's also on the call, he's a managing member at Capricorn Professional Advisors. He's also on our board of directors, and he's been doing an outstanding job of not only already a busy guy responding to the needs of his own firm, but also answering a lot of the questions from small businesses. So Jamie, I'd like to thank you for that. And then I know we're going to jump into some of these kind of common questions that small businesses have at this time.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, and thank you everybody for letting me participate in today's call. Yeah, we've been, I think the last check I saw was just over 100 posts relative to these questions, and they range from all over the board, but there's some common themes relative to what we're seeing in these questions, and they range from how to sole practitioner or sole proprietors and those that receive 1099s, how do they file and what information do they use? The banks are going to be opening those up to applications on Friday, actually. They did this in 2 rounds. They allowed businesses with employees to apply effective last Friday, and now they're going to allow the 1099s, independent contractors, and Schedule C filers apply on Friday. I think one of the other, the other questions that we've had is what's included in a lot of questions on what's included in payroll costs. And there's been some confusion with this relative to the federal taxes, taking them out or putting them in, and they've been cleared. According to the latest Treasury guidance, federal taxes are not included in the calculation. However, you can include the state taxes. So that's really the state unemployment because you're starting with gross payroll. I think there was confusion going back that we were supposed to start with net payroll and then work backwards. And that's been cleared up where it's no, we work from gross payroll and then add things to that from there. And so if you use gross payroll, you've already got things included such as federal withholding, state withholding, and any local withholding as well. And then we go into the, one of the biggest questions I think, and one of the biggest confusions people have is, what do I do when I use these funds? Or if I don't use these funds right away, what's going to happen? And so I want to kind of clear up that there's really 2 aspects to this, to the use of the funds. There's the portion of the use of funds that is going to be forgivable. And then there's the part that's not going to be forgivable. And so what we've been telling people is that within the first 8 weeks after the loan is funded, you have those 8 weeks to spend on payroll costs and rent, on utilities, and mortgage interest, and some other debt service interest that may exist as long as it existed before the February 15 deadline that they put on there. And the other caveat is those non-payroll costs cannot exceed 25% of the forgiveness portion. Then whatever's not forgiven, it just turns into a term loan for 1% over 2 years. So, yeah.
Let me just kind of pull on
Sure.
that one a little bit. This is one that I think a lot of people are
Absolutely.
My guess is most people who take this loan would like for all of it to be forgivable, or all of it to be forgiven.
Yep.
And so let's turn the way you just said that slightly differently. What would it take? What would one need to do for this entire loan to be forgivable?
They would, assuming that it's going to, whenever it's funded, they need to start to bring back all their employees back onto payroll so that they can maximize the amount of payroll that they have. And the payroll cost, and remember that the payroll cost cannot exceed $100,000 annualized per employee. So that works out to $8,333 per month. So maximize out the amount of payroll that you are paying, and then look at make sure you've got your rent incurred and the utilities. And so if you think through the calculation of what you can borrow is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So really the spirit of the laws is for you to continue with your payroll, and if not, try to even pay more payroll to qualify under that 2.5 times, because you've really got 2 months to spend 2.5 times your monthly payroll. And so that other half time, if you will, is to cover all of the additional costs that you may incur, such as rent, utilities, and debt service, interest on debt service. So the only way to really maximize that loan is to just pay as much payroll as you can.
So partly, I think what people are thinking about is strategy. And one of those strategies is, while I may be eligible to borrow 2.5 times average monthly payroll, should I?
Right.
And part of that will have to do with how much of that payroll I'm bringing back as the next 8 weeks play out. I mean, what would you sort of advise in terms of strategy there? So
this may be contrary to what you've been trying to, but I'm telling clients to borrow as much as you can, because it's a 1% loan. Let me know where you can find a better deal than that. I understand that it's a 2-year repayment period, but it's a 1% loan. You can't, so even if it's not forgivable, it should not have that big of an overall impact on the business going forward for the next 2 years. You've got a 6-month deferral of your first payment, and then from there, it's going to be a 2-year 1% loan. Now, the other side of this too is borrow as much as you can. There's no prepayment to pay it all back after the 8 months. So let's say, for example, a business has got $100,000 average payroll. They borrow $250,000 and they only burn through 2.25. They have a choice to make: is do they need that extra $25,000 that they can still use on payroll cost after that 8 weeks, or do they just not need it now that they've gotten back on the right sided and then then just pay the entire loan off? Again, you're talking about 1% of interest over a 8-week period is going to be nothing relative to the opportunity to have the ability to have those funds. So
and it's 1%, no collateral, no personal guarantee.
Right.
So I think we have been sort of alluding to, where are you going to find a deal like that?
Yeah. Take it and run as fast as you can.
Right.
That's what I'm telling all my clients is, don't look back, just take it and figure out how to, we'll figure out how to use it. And yeah, we would all love to be able to give it forgiven. I mean, ultimately that's free money. And, I think that this is probably, as a CPA, this is the first time that I've seen where a government program fits most of the business owners that are out there. A lot of these programs were always specialty. You had to fit in this bucket. This is one of those that it fits all buckets. So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, I think, for business owners to take advantage of. And keep in mind, the spirit is really to bring us back into employment and prevent the unemployment from getting out of control and so forth. But I think there's some things that you can do to take advantage of it. I've gotten many calls from, a lot of them are in the medical field, a lot of dentists, doctors, where they're completely shut down and they've laid off their employees and they want to bring them back, but they don't want to get this loan until they'll be able to go back into open up. And they can't do that until the stay-at-home order is lifted. And so they're saying, can I control when I borrow this? There's been no guidance on this. I've asked my bankers and my resources, where are we at with this? And nobody's giving us an answer. I think that in my speculation, based on the spirit of the law and the fact, the sheer volume, I don't think bankers are going to allow you to pick a target date. I think you're going to have to kind of deal with it when they say it's ready to go, and we're going to be transferring it over. And so there's going to be an opportunity that the business owners are going to have to make, or a decision. Do I bring them all back at this point? Do I park the money and then know that some of this is not going to be forgiven, but use it for the long term to help me get back started, even if it's not going to be forgiven? Because again, it's a 1% loan and it's helping you start back your business and get back into bringing those employees back. So I wouldn't be afraid of or be scared, because you may have some of this unforgiven. So
James, I think that what you just went over is really important, because we have had a lot of questions on, I'm afraid of just getting back up to payroll now. If I'm not able to operate after 8 weeks and most of the money's gone, then I'm right back to where I started. And so maybe we should wait. But, and so it's an important thing. Like, there's rules, and then there's like what the intent of it is. We're still waiting on the rules on this area, but we do know that the intent is to get people back on pay. The intent of these loans, or the payroll protection program, is to get people back on payroll now, not to help get them back on payroll after the economy has started back up.
Right.
So the extraordinary lengths that they're taking of, here's a loan you don't have to take back, is really meant to deal with this time period. There might be a little wiggle room. The bank says, you're ready to close, and avoid their call for a couple days.
Exactly.
I'm not available for another week or something like that.
Right.
But in terms of, hey, I don't want this money for 6 weeks, don't count on that being a possibility. Maybe when the rules are clarified, but I would say don't count on that as being a possibility.
No, and the law and the rules, you're absolutely correct, that the intent was to prevent unemployment and get people back as soon as possible. But the rules also say that as long as you're not in violation of the loan, as long as you use it for payroll related costs and so forth, they don't give an intent of when you need to spend that money. They're just trying to throw a carrot out at you to try to spend as much of it as soon as possible to prevent. Because the other flip side of this too is if we employers spend the money, and then what happens if they're not ready to go back after 8 weeks, you're going to put those employees right back on unemployment. So there's some flaws in the way that the loan is set up. I wish that there was a delay there, because I think that it really should be utilized as a loan to help businesses kind of get back up on their feet, because a lot of businesses, service industries and things of that nature, have to invest in their employees first to generate the revenue, and the revenue doesn't come for 60 to 90 days later. So, some of these businesses may be collecting now. When they go to start back up, they're not going to see revenue on those employee production for another 60 to 90 days. So again, I think that everybody needs to kind of sit down with their advisor and really map out what it's going to look like when we do come back, whatever that date is.
Jamie, let me kind of get this question on the table. We batted it around a little bit, but independent contractors. So early guidance said count them in your payroll. Yep. Later on, guidance came out that they could stand on their own. I've been using the analogy, I should, with a real CPA on the line, maybe ask this. It's like dependents. If they can file their own taxes, they're not on yours. You can't claim them as a dependent. It's sort of that relationship between the company and their independent contractor.
Yeah, and it's also, if you think of the fundamentals of the loan, since they're allowing independent contractors to get their oown money, if you claim them under yours, then they would have to figure out how to police it on the independent contractor, and it just prevents double dipping of those loan proceeds, because you don't want the employer to borrow on it, and then the independent contractor to be able to borrow on it as well. So I think that after I've read that, that was a fine distinction, and it made sense to me. It goes back to some employers have to really kind of decide if their employees are 1099s going forward, but that's a different topic.
So
time.
the answer is you don't include them in payroll.
Nope.
And we appreciate that clarity.
Nope. Yep.
I got a feeling we could talk to you the rest of our time, but we've got a couple other things we want to
Sure.
talk about. Jamie, thank you. Bob?
Actually, if I apologize, let me just jump in for one more, and if you don't know the answer to this one, it's okay, because I've been searching everywhere for it. But so what if I'm both? Like I have, I'm an LLC, I've got payroll, but I pay myself through draws. Now I know a lot of banks are saying that the draws cannot be included in the calculation. Have you come across this, and what do you?
So that's good. Yeah. So that's going to kind of come back to basic tax rules, if you will, because even though you're an LLC, and assuming that you're a single member LLC taxed as so there's two, depending on how your entity is set up, Brian, is going to be really kind of be where the answer is. So I'm going to answer kind of both ways. If you're a single member LLC taxed as a sole proprietor, you're going to report your net income on Schedule C of your tax return. And the guidance clearly says that it's based upon your self-employment income. So it doesn't matter your draws, it's going to matter on what your income that you reported on your business. That's going to qualify for the PPP calculation. So sole proprietors are going to be fine. You don't need to worry about your draws because you're looking at your net income. And the theory being is you make $100,000 and you draw 90 out in draws, you've left 10 in the business, you're still going to have a $100,000 profit. It doesn't matter your draws in that example. Now, if you end up being an LLC and then decide to treat yourself as a corporation or an S corporation, and you only take draws out, which technically is not proper under S corp rules, you're not going to be able to those draws will not be able to qualify, because they have to be, at the end of the day, the best rule of thumb is it's got to be earned income. So wages, 1099 or anything subject to self-employment or FICA tax is really what's going to be is going to be calculated in the calculation. That's the best way to explain it. So the draws of S corporations are not.
Good deal. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
Thank you both. Bob, again, welcome to Trial by Fire. Your first, we were meeting with you last week in your very first week. Delighted to sort of make your acquaintance. We know your organization well. Your board chair is the CPA of our board chair. David Eckelbarger has been one of our task forces. Peggy D is a good friend and your predecessor. So looking forward to working with you, Bob, and thanks for partnering up on this effort.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to working with you guys as well. It's been great so far. And you can see why I wanted one of our experts like Jamie on the call. So again, Jamie, I appreciate you answering all those questions.
Anytime, and just keep them coming through the website. We love answering them. So hopefully it's going to take a community to get out of this thing. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing relative to making sure the state of Michigan is well positioned for this. So I applaud you guys for your efforts as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you both. The question that has been on our lips really from the very first day was, will this be enough? $350 billion. We've been doing the math, and we know that it really simply won't go that far. Brian, we were hearing earlier today that as early as Thursday, Senator McConnell wants it on the floor of the Senate. What do you know about more money?
We started hearing right away. In fact, we put this question, you remember, before the original passage to Congressman Upton, and he said right in our briefing that if it's not enough, we'll do more. And so we asked Congressman Heisinger about it, and when he was on, and he said, yeah, I'm very confident that there's a lot of support for this. We'll do more. Now, as it's become more and more clear that the demand is very, very high for this. It's a really key piece of the not just recovery, but survival of small business. We're starting to see that turn into action. So Senator McConnell has mentioned that he wants to move this very quickly through the Senate, maybe as early as as Thursday, and they don't have to call the whole Senate back unless there's an objection to it. They can do certain things by voice votes. You know, they got a different set of rules that, you know, in the federal Congress, but we're feeling optimistic that they're talking about between 200 and 250 billion more appropriated to the program. So if that happens, what I think that's going to allow people to do is really take a deep breath. That yeah, it's still urgent. Yeah, you still need to be persistent and make sure you get your application in and drive it through the process. But it's going to give more time for more banks and credit unions to get things around and make it happen. So some that maybe today are saying, we don't know if we can do it before the money's gone. I think we're going to have more options for small businesses if this goes through. And I'm feeling, I still got to put the asterisk on it, but I'm feeling very optimistic that that's going to happen sooner than what I would have imagined. I was thinking 6 weeks, you know, or maybe a month. And if they do it that quickly, hats off to them.
Yeah, I think you and I have both been around politics and public policy making enough to know that this one looks like it's going to happen. And we've been trying to be careful about just speculating or whatever, but just bringing facts. But if we're reading the tea leaves, it sure looks like everybody's in support of bringing some more dollars to the table for this. And that, as you just said, should give people some peace of mind because there was such an urgency about it. And I think a lot of independent contractors and sole proprietors were thinking, oh my gosh, the money could all be gone by Friday. And so I think there's a good chance that people can relax about this one. Hey, so earlier today, the legislature met. They did, so we talked about it a little bit to give the governor some additional authority under emergency, declaring an emergency. What happened and what does it mean?
The House and the Senate both went through a very careful process of staged participation by their members, the senators and the representatives, to check in and approve a concurrent resolution to extend the emergency through the end of this month. So you could look at it as through April 30th or until May 1st. Now, this is an extension of the emergency. This doesn't extend any of the actions that the governor took under the emergency. But we do also think that it's appropriate at this point, knowing everything that we know, to start getting you to think about or to prepare for the fact that the stay-home order is going to be extended. The governor said yesterday that within the next week she'll be extending that. It was supposed to go through the 13th of April. And that was the original order, but and then kind of we'll reassess and see what's necessary. We do know that the numbers, the infection numbers that are coming through, they continue to rise. The mortality continues to rise. And until you see those numbers crest and then start to come down, that I don't expect any significant changes in that order. So sometime in the next week it'll come out. What I've been saying to people is, you know, I'm not on the inside. Certainly, we don't make this decision, but I want people to be prepared for that stay-home order to be extended through the end of the month, the same time the emergency is extended to. Maybe it will be shorter, but I'd be surprised if it was shorter.
You know, I talked to a business owner last night who said, you know, it's one of those confusion of headlines sometimes. There was a talk about extending the governor's authority 70 days, and his hearing of that was, are we going to extend this stay home, stay safe executive order and for another 70 days? And was really very much panicked about that, which I don't blame him. Can you clarify that one a little bit?
Yeah. So these are two different things. So there's the declaration of an emergency, which allows the governor to take actions without permission of the legislature, including actions that suspend certain laws and requirements. So it's very broad, very substantial authority that is delegated to the governor. One of the things the governor could do with that authority is issue a stay-home order. But the fact that the legislature, they ended up extending it for just to the end of this month. So an additional 23 days, not an additional 70 days, as the governor had asked for. By the way, there's been some argument back and forth. Does the legislature have to? Could the governor act without it? And there's some discrepancy in the law. But since 1977, there have been 10 such extensions of emergencies beyond the original 28 days that are granted by to the governor without the legislature. All 10 of them, 11 after today, did receive approval from the legislature to be extended. So this process of the legislature acting is a necessary process, but it only authorizes the governor to take emergency actions, but it doesn't presuppose what those actions will be. And so the stay-home order is just one of the things. The governor has issued dozens of executive orders under this emergency declaration authority, and we're going to continue to see those happen over the next month. But there's also discussions now starting, both among the governor's team and with the legislature's team, on what needs to happen to restart the economy. What are the sorts of rules and staging in and easing into it? So they are thinking about these things, and we're involved in those discussions too. So we can't say when yet, but the fact that they're thinking about, okay, how do we get back to work and how do we do it safely? How do we make sure we avoid some reinfection and resurgence of the disease? The fact that they're thinking about that in the context of getting back to work is positive. So I don't know when, but the big early work is starting now.
So, and as we've said along these briefings, we are not just observing that that's happening. We're not just reporting that that's happening. We're definitely a part of those conversations. And Brian, you certainly are at the table in those conversations, and our board chair is a part of the conversation. So very much, when and how we get back to work is an active discussion right now. And fortunately, we have a voice in that conversation. Well, let's start to wrap up. I've been saying earlier this week that we're having a webinar on Thursday. This one really is about, now that people are working so much remote, what should you as a business owner be thinking about from a cybersecurity standpoint? And just in the last 24, 48 hours, I continue to hear stories about cyber criminals really taking advantage of this opportunity and people's sort of vulnerability at this moment. So another thing to worry about, but certainly something that you really need to be paying attention to. And we're also sort of having in the works, and I think with our partners at the CPAs, a webinar on, okay, now you've gotten your PPP loan, now what? Even the strategy conversation Jamie was talking about a little bit. How do I use it? Do I want to maximize forgiveness? Am I willing to let some of it be cash flow, or not cash flow, but a loan that I can fund some other things with? So working on a webinar there. We don't have a time and date for that, but we will. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Senator Mike Shirkey, who is a leader in that conversation that Brian was just talking about. When and how and the circumstances under which we get going again. Look forward to talking again tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. In the meantime, remember to wash your hands.
And don't touch your face. Thanks, everybody. Good luck.